This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everyone. If you're considering redesigning your living space or your commercial, your workspace, this is one of those things that I really believe that we take for granted because we focus on all this other stuff that needs to get done. The walls, the ceiling, on and on and on and on. But what about the flooring? Think about the abuse that gets on a daily basis, especially in a commercial space. We're going to focus on that today with the microscope or the spotlight on tile. And she's got so much insight, does so many amazing products and projects you can see on her website, MSA Interiors. Marcy Sagel joins us once again. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just, back at work this week and, full steam ahead. So definitely on that new year kind of like path.
Well, it sounds like your plane is taken off. A lot of us are taxiing to 2026. You're already in the air. And we're on the air here. Tile. Let's start with tile. There's so many different types, so many different configurations. Where should we start?
So, there's more than what people actually know about tile. And so even people in the industry, like people really don't know every type of tile there is out there. And so over the years, I've worked with a lot of different distributors and manufacturers to help package price points and finishes and colorways for North America for the multifamily and commercial industry. So I've gone to a lot of the tile shows. I've met with a lot of the different manufacturers. So I know a lot about flooring and tile specifically. And so because I've been doing what I've been doing for so long and worked with these manufacturers. So basically you have all different sizes, obviously. And over the years, different sizes have become more popular. Like in 30 years ago, you were looking at 12 by 12 tiles. That was sort of like the rage.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have ginormous, we have 10-foot size slabs that are porcelain slabs, or we have on the floor, we could be doing 48 by 48 or 24 by 48 or 24 by 24. You don't ever really see the 12 by 12 anymore. That's considered dated. Or the 4 by 4 that we used to see in bathrooms. So
yes.
And over the years, you see different sort of trends happen with tile. So for instance, you have like, during the 70s, you had certain colors, you had sort of like the gold colors, some terracotta oranges, and you had some sort of like green, avocado greens, okay? What I like to tell people with tile is super expensive. If anybody's ever redone a bathroom or a kitchen with flooring, you know what I'm talking about. It's expensive to demolition, number one. And number two, it's expensive to put it in. So you want to make sure that whatever you're putting in is timeless and has an incredibly long shelf life. And I mean, the last thing you're going to do in your house is replace tile that you've replaced. If you replace it in your lifetime, you're almost never going to touch it again. So you really want it to have an incredibly long shelf life.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. By the way, when you were talking about those 80s colors on tile, I was like throwing up in my mouth. Just looking at the colors and I'm getting the visual. And last time we got together, we were talking about mall redos and what's in malls. And I was in our mall in this town, this city, and they're refurbishing it. But when they were peeling back, I could see the old, just what you described, and those colors, that gold, that green, I'm happy it's gone.
And then even like in the 50s, you saw colors like pale blues and pinks and pale yellow. So if you bought a house that was done in the 50s, those bathrooms, if any of them are still in there, they might have a black and white, or they might have the pale color of blue or pink. So you could kind of date a house based on some of the tile in the bathrooms.
Sure.
And unless they've been redone. And so, tile is a really, really big thing, and it's needed in every single project, residential or commercial. So you really want to think about what you're picking. And one other thing, of course, there's all different kind of edges to tile and different sizes and different thicknesses. And you have what's called a through body tile, where the tile color goes all the way through, so that if it chipped, it would have the same color rather than a terracotta color or underneath of it. So you got to think about these things.
I never thought of that. And it would be my assumption that, it'll be uniform color, but oh my gosh, what a train wreck, if you get a chip.
Yeah. And, now these huge porcelain slabs that I mentioned earlier are not, they're porcelain tiles. They're not that we call them slabs, but they're actually porcelain tiles, and they are literally 10 feet long. They come in very different sizes. We use them for everything. You can use them in a shower. You can use them in a hospital lobby. And it's a really inexpensive way to get a lot of sort of like high-end look. You can get them to look exactly like marble, and they really give it a lot of expensive look for a little bit of money. So there's so many different avenues that you can go down. So some of the things that I would also mention are that tile, just like fabric, have dye lots. Okay. So if you order tile and you don't check to make sure the dye lot is from the same dye lot and some from the same grouping, you could end up having a different color tile. So you have to be very careful about making sure that if you need an extra box or two, that it's actually from the same dye lot that you originally purchased from.
Wow. All right. We talk about porcelain. Let's talk about materials.
Oh yeah.
So what comes to my mind immediately, and I'm always positive, but I'm going to call this a fail. The last house I was in, which I sold a year or so ago, they had redone the kitchen. All right, great. Biggest expense. I don't have to take care of that and some other stuff. But the tile they use, and I'm trying to remember the material it was made out of. And it was maybe, 12 by 12, maybe 16 by 16. I'm trying to remember in the kitchen. But it was this very porous material that was fragile. And, you're dropping pots and pans and things like that in the kitchen. And there were chips and in them. And I'm going overboard here, but I got to the point where.
Was it limestone?
No, but if you say the name, I'll remember it.
Okay, because there's a number of materials that are porous that it could be. And typically we use those types of porous materials not in a kitchen. They can be used in a kitchen, but we usually get them filled. If they are porous, we have any of the crevices filled, and you purchase it that way. Yeah.
So funny you should say that, because in the kitchen, got a crack in one, or it wasn't even a crack. It lost a piece of it, flaked away, like unbelievable. By the way, the kitchen wasn't old. It was recently redone. And I'm like, all right, now what do I do? And so I'm geeky. So I come up with this epoxy that had a color that's sort of like an off-white grayish, and put it in there, smoothed it in. You couldn't tell. But my point here is you got to be careful about the material. Like, I don't know why they chose that.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, like if you go and you travel and you go to any museums, you see tons and tons of old marble that still looks fabulous today. Like you look at the floors and you look at any of the museums, or even like the Vatican, or like any of these large structures, and you go and you look, they used marble, and a lot of it, okay, over the course of the years. And, and you can care for marble, and you can put a sealer on marble, and any of the natural materials you can put a sealer on. And so it's a clear seal. And so basically it changes the color. Sometimes it just changes it just a slight bit, makes it a little bit darker. And so, we like to show people those changes in materials before they pick, especially for kitchens and bathrooms, because you want to make sure that, for instance, people come up with the craziest backsplash combinations that are just so awful that you're like, what? Who thought of this? And so they're just thinking about what they want, which is fine. They're paying for it. But resale, you always have to be thinking about, would someone else want this? Okay. Does this make sense for long term. Okay. And it's the same thing in a bathroom. I can't tell you how many houses I look at online, and I look at the bathrooms and they have these weird sort of borders in the shower.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, remember when they were big? They
Yeah.
like up around the ceiling, there would be this
Yeah.
wallpaper border going around.
Yeah, well, they do it in tile, which makes wallpaper at least you can take off and paint.
Right.
Tile, not so much. So they have these like weird vertical lines going up, and you're like, who thought this looked good? So
Yeesh.
again, keeping in mind that you are maybe not the only person that's going to live there, and that eventually you're going to sell the house, and you really want to have something that is functional and timeless and useful. So
Let's go timeless. Can we do that,
Yeah.
Marcy? So here I have a commercial space and a foyer area where people enter and then they go to elevators or whatever. Just I'm painting the picture.
Yeah.
But I want something that's going to last a long time. I'll put the expense into it. What would that be? Would you even suggest marble?
So we have so many options. It's just unlimited at this point. So we can do real stone, obviously, and that could be anything from marble to limestone to, anything. Then we have the porcelains that I talked about. And then we have large scale tiles with incredibly great finishes for walking and having traffic. Because if it's a commercial space, you're going to have a lot of traffic.
Sure.
If you're in the Northeast or anywhere it snows, west, anywhere you get snow, you got to make sure that you have the right finish on the tile. You can't put glossy on the floor. You never put a glossy tile in a bathroom floor.
Can I just jump in there? Because to your point, where I live now, and I'm in between houses, not the best time to buy, but I'm in a nice, apartment. I don't know what the material is, but it's black with some flecks in it and very shiny. And I've already fallen on it twice. And I'm careful. But I remember walking in, just carrying something, just a little bit of moisture, right down in my butt. I don't know what they were thinking of. And recent snowstorm, right away, you can see all the salt, the sand, all of that, like the worst selection. It had to be cheap. I don't know why they picked that.
Yeah. And again, in a commercial space, we like to put a walk-off area in between a vestibule, walk-in door, and the next door to get in, so that you have an area where your feet are actually wiping off without you actually wiping them off. So
sort of like a mud room, but not a mud room.
Exactly. For larger scale, big projects that have lots of traffic going through them. And it's the same thing on the floor. Like you want it to, I always say, you want a non-skid tile that's got a finish ratio that will not have people slipping and falling when it's snowing and raining. And you want to make sure that you're picking something that's actually going to work for high traffic. And so really, really picky about what materials we pick for commercial spaces with high traffic. So.
What else should we keep in mind here? And maybe if it's not tile, what else would it be?
So
what would you choose?
In commercial spaces, we have these installations that we put in that are walk-off mats that are installed as a mat, or they're installed wall to wall, and they have metal structure mixed in with a rug structure that are pretty cool. And I'm sure you've come into a building, you go into your hospital or doctor's building or physician center, and they usually have them there.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And the older ones used to be, it almost looked like, best description, lines in it, where it would be a texture and you're wiping your feet without even intentionally wiping your feet.
Exactly. So they're like horizontal lines as you're walking in.
Yes.
And then it's like a carpet and a metal, or just all carpet.
Yeah.
And now there's so many great things on the market for that. So again, you're thinking about traffic, the amount of people, making sure people are safe, because that's ultimately in a commercial space what you want. You want to make sure people are picking things that are safe for people to walk on.
Sure.
And then when you get into large scale apartment buildings, the management company, whoever's managing the building, and from the largest ones in the country to the smallest ones, they like to brand mats as you walk in with the logo on it.
Yep.
Or they have companies come that pick up the mats and bring another set and change them out and clean them. Okay. And I really do not like mats thrown on top of tile, because I think if you were designing the property right, you would have incorporated the right amount of walk-off space within the design, and then you don't have to just throw and toss mats on top of beautiful flooring. You know, so you got to think about these things as you're designing. But, let's talk about a bathroom, for instance. Okay.
Sure.
You've got walk-in showers now, large scale showers people are doing in residential or hotels. And you have to have a smaller tile on the floor of the shower so that you can slope the water, okay, to the drain. You want to make sure it doesn't sit at the bottom of the shower. So you do what's called a slight slope. You slope it to either a one-side drain, which is very common out of those, trough kind of drains,
Sure.
or you have a center drain. It could be a square, it could be a round, and it gets a slight sloping that happens. And the only way you can do the slight sloping is to have smaller scale tiles that allow you to sort of get that incline going a little bit in the bottom of the shower pan, okay, or non-shower pan. We're doing it with tile. And, now we're using all of these larger scale format things. I can't even tell you how many times I've been in a hotel, I'm sure you have too, where you're in the shower and you're standing in water puddle, okay? Because it didn't slope it properly.
I don't have OCD, but so gross when you consider that other people's feet, I don't want to stand in that water. And even if they cleaned it, I don't want to stand in that.
Yeah. So, again, small things, everyone isn't necessarily thinking about it. And some people have good tile installers. Some people have just, random people doing their tile. You want to make sure you're thinking about putting a smaller size tile in the bottom of the shower. And you can put any size basically on the walls. Also on the floor is where you want to make sure you have the least amount of slippage. So you definitely never want to put a gloss tile on the floor of your shower, ever. It's worse in the shower than it is anywhere else. So
I love talking with you because it's like a car going down the road. We're in the front seat, and it's like, wait, I'll turn the car and go, let's go that way. So we just made a turn into the bathroom lane.
Yes.
Commercial bathrooms, hotels. It seems like it is the stand-up shower, and the clear doors seems to be the thing now. It's been around for a few years for sure. Is that going to be around, and considerations there? Why am I bringing this up? I was in Miami last month, and this is what I'm talking about. And I go to open the door and turn on the shower, but I can't turn it on without getting hit with the water, but I'm still dressed.
Right.
The way they configured the door, it didn't allow me to get in there to turn it before the water came out. It's just ridiculous.
I don't know what you're talking about. So basically, especially in Miami, Miami had a lot of renovations of existing old buildings.
Yep.
Okay. The footprints were different, and they had to work with what they had. So when they're doing renovations for hotels that were other hotels in the past, they're working with the footprint that they have. So unfortunately, the doors and the plumbing are where they are. Okay. And so the newer hotels and the more expensive hotels, you don't have necessarily that issue. And if you do, it's just poorly designed. So what you can do is you can put the function of the water to turn on and the temperature on the one side with the head of the shower on the other side, if that is the issue. But then you'd have to plumb two different walls, which is more expensive. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the other thing is that if anybody's ever renovated a residential bathroom, you'll know this. When you do a bathroom in the shower, you have to use whatever is behind the wall has to fit the same head. So you got to be very careful what manufacturers you pick, because you want to make sure you can down the road update those and change those out. Okay. So hotels have been very particular about which brands they use, because they definitely are going to change out the shower head and shower handles over the years to update the look of the shower. and they do it with the faucet. You'll see you go into a bathroom and they've updated the bathrooms in a hotel room, given a facelift kind of to, the room with the carpet and, now the flat TVs and no more arm wires and a built-in kind of like area for, a safe and any kind of refrigeration that they may have. It changes, but you want to make sure that you can always change out the handles and the shower head because they're going to change over the years. Okay. So you want to make sure you're working with a big name brand for any of the manufacturers for residential because the hotels already know that. So they know they're going to be changing those things out to update it rather than to have to go in and change the tile.
You know what I'm thinking here too, as we're talking, and maybe I haven't been in the higher level hotels, but you would think that we would be at the point now where there would be a digital display in the shower. So I could turn it. All right, we're up to 91 degrees. All right, that's great. Because so many times you go in there, you turn the lever. It's like, I don't know, that hall, is that cold? Let me go over here.
They do have that. And they definitely have those in higher end residentials. But in commercial, typically multifamily, or only some hotels have that. I have been in some hotels in Europe that have it, the higher end hotels, like you said. But a lot of the brands that we have here, I would say you'll see less of that, where they do have a temperature gauge. And typically they already have it turned to that temperature gauge so that it comes on automatically.
Right.
You could adjust it if you want it hotter or colder. And I mean, how many times have you gotten into a shower in a hotel where you have no clue what temperature it's going to be?
This is what I'm saying. Like when the lever, even in higher end, you turn it a little bit.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's not intuitive where it's, hot one side, cold the other side. It's not even labeled properly. And you can't always see it. Plus, you don't want to get hit by the water. Right. Just that, I want to turn it on, let it run for a little while, get up to temperature. And what about the doors? Since we're in the bathroom, what about the doors leading into the bathroom? It's been going on for a while. Will this continue where it's those sliding doors?
Barn doors.
Yeah.
So barn doors everybody's using barn doors, but the bottom line is barn doors are not like super, super duper sturdy. And, they come off the track, they have issues, So it's not to say that you shouldn't use them, but there are lots of different types of doors that you can use to get into a bathroom. But you have to think about it because if it's a new build, you can do a pocket door, okay? If it is more modern, then you might be doing a slider door like you're talking about. But ultimately, you want something that's going to function. And so for me, when we're designing, I want things that are not only great looking, but I really want things to hold up over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of the key.
And it's so true with those doors, they take a beating. And even in mid-level hotels that use them, many times it's, I don't want to say minimal privacy, but it's not a lot of privacy where, you close the door. You're sealed off in that room. Yeah. So, a lot of times, if the door is hanging funny, somebody could see in. So, let's say you have friends. Yeah, just wait for me. I'll be in the bathroom. It's like, I love how you have your finger on all this. Like you know exactly what we're talking about because you've seen it, you've dealt with it. And your job is to make sure that doesn't happen in your designs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think for us, it is, again, we have so many different types of clients and every client has sort of their like thumbprint of how they want it.
Right.
And so we're working with lots of different directions. And so it really is ultimately the choice of the client. So residential, commercial doesn't make a difference. If you want something to go in a certain direction, that's the way we're going to do it. And we might tell you why we might not do it that way. But we're also going to give you some other options. And then, you're going to pick ultimately the direction that you want to go in. And that's what we're going to design. So, lots of choices. I think there's just so many choices out there. And then grouting. Okay. Grouting tile. I like to say to people, just because you picked it doesn't mean it's going to come out the way you want it to come out. So when you do a wall, we like to show you maybe what it looks like with if someone says, I want a contrasting grout color. Okay, exactly. I want a dark grout color because it won't show any dirt over years, but guess what? It also completely changes the design look. If you have that spa look, that quiet, that sort of monotone look, and then you put a contrasting dark grout, it all of a sudden isn't quiet anymore. So it completely changes the look that you're going for. So you really have to think about that.
So many choices. This is why you hire an experienced, creative, qualified designer, because you'll have, at the very least, you'll have all these choices at your fingertips and some of the direction. You could throw those in front of me. I don't know what I'm looking at. Yeah. That's where your expertise comes in.
In the tile world, if you go into any tile showroom, for the most part, they're going to be trained and educated with a lot of the different manufacturers that they're carrying, and they're going to be able to give you some direction of, where and what you need. But there's kind of basics that you just kind of want to go into there knowing before you actually pick anything. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. Really getting something that's got a long shelf life and not something that's going to date it.
You and your team, amazing, MSAinteriors.com. Marcy, thank you for all the insight. It's so relatable. We take it for granted. This, like, every day you're in a bathroom multiple times, or you're in a commercial space. When done right, it makes a difference. Thank you. I appreciate you being here today.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.